Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Frost & Sullivan's new CX Quarterly podcast. I'm Michael DeSalles, Principal Analyst, and we call our new podcast CX Unfiltered, where we talk about trends and shifts disrupting the experience economy we live in today. Joining me are three members of our CX Analyst team to talk about those trends in customer experience management, specifically around global BPOs. With me today is Sebastian Menutti, Industry Director, Sherrel Roche, Associate Director, and finally, Krishna Baidya, our Senior Industry Director. Sebastian, welcome. You're dialing in from Argentina.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure. Here's your question. Over the past 2 years, stock valuations of several major BPO companies have fallen sharply. What's really driving this decline? Is it fair market correction or a sign that the BPO industry itself is under structural threat? And I've got a second part to that question. The second part is, looking ahead, is the industry evolving or actually at risk of collapsing in the next few years?
Good one. Okay. Thank you for the question, Michael. I think that the drop in the BPO stock valuations has much more to do with market narratives than with actual industry fundamentals or shifts. Yes, we do have higher interest rates. We have macro uncertainty. We have massive hype around AI, and all of that is pushing capital away from anything perceived as labor intensive. And BPOs were grouped into that bucket. But if you actually look beneath the surface, I think that the demand for outsourcing has not deeply weakened. And this is corroborated by your own research, by the way. It is actually becoming more critical because enterprises are under constant pressure to reduce costs, to increase revenue, to be available 24/7, to scale globally. And BPOs are one of the few models that can do all of that at the same time. So you hear that AI is going to replace BPOs, but that is not the case. In reality, AI is amplifying BPO value because most enterprises don't have the data maturity, the process discipline, or the operating models to deploy AI at scale on their own. And BPOs already sit inside those workflows. They understand the pain points. They can combine automation, AI, and human expertise to deliver outcomes faster and cheaper. So you ask, is the valuation correction fair? I think only partially, because some companies were actually slow to evolve and deserved a reset. But many BPOs are now transforming into AI-enabled operation partners and not headcount providers. So they're taking ownership of the end-to-end process. They are pricing on outcomes, and they are infusing technology directly into service delivery and the customer journey. So I don't think the industry is collapsing at all. I think the industry is entering a new growth cycle. So what we're seeing is not the end of BPOs, but the end of the people-only outsourcing. That is done, but valuations for companies that successfully reposition themselves as tech-enabled service partners, those valuations will recover, and we're going to see the BPO industry growing again.
Great. Thank you, Sebastian. Sherrel, you're up next. You know, Sebastian mentioned partnerships, and I hear that a lot. So it's around that. Here's your question. What does partnership really mean today when we're looking at clients in BPOs? How is it different from vendor relationships of the past? And how has the role of BPOs in customer service evolved that's gone beyond traditional cost arbitrage models? And Sherrel, you're dialing in today from Kuala Lumpur. Welcome.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for the question. So as we know, customer experience has now emerged as a core competitive differentiator in the digital era. Frost and Sullivan research indicates that a digital-first mindset drives organizations to transform their legacy operating models to technology-based back office and CX processes and services. Technology outsourcing that once focused on low-cost customer support roles and labor-intensive services, as well as offshoring, are evolving into hybrid models that combine AI-enabled efficiencies and human expertise. With this in context, enterprise client and BPO service provider partnerships today signify a shift from a transactional and a labor-centric relationship to a deeply integrated outcome-based collaboration. Rather than being contracted primarily to deliver FTEs at the lowest possible cost, service providers are engaged with their clients to co-own CX and business outcomes, such as revenue growth, customer retention, customer satisfaction score, digital adoption, and risk mitigation. Everything is then tied to risk and outcome-based model. Today, organizations seek more than just cost savings. They require their BPO service providers to enable CX transformation, increase agility, increase scalability, boost compliance, as well as take care of governance. Furthermore, service providers must transition to a technology-first approach while leveraging AI, and not just AI, generative AI as well as agentic AI, whichever is the best way to go forward, and then data analytics and automation to deliver quantifiable business value. Service providers need to reposition themselves as CX transformation partners that bring domain depth, vertical expertise, consulting capabilities, and technology blueprints to re-architecture customer journeys, not merely operate existing processes. With this in mind, the strategic question for organizations is no longer about how cheaply can I outsource this work, but which partner can help me continuously rewire my customer operations and back office operations for resilience, differentiation, and measurable business impact. Increasingly, the focus is on co-designing AI and data-enabled operating models. So for service providers, it is very important to focus on distinctive value creation through end-to-end experience orchestration, as well as end-to-end back office operation optimization, where service providers will bring vertical specific insights, regulatory fluence, governance, and journey-level redesign. These capabilities are something that clients cannot easily replicate in-house. So this is the way forward for all BPO players and CX players as well in the industry.
Great, Sherrel. Thanks so much. I took away from that, the CX transformation partnership piece, which I really like. Thank you so much. Krishna, you're up next, sir, dialing in from Singapore. So here's my question for you. And Sherrel mentioned AI, so here we go. This is a hard question. How are AI and automation changing agent roles, workflows, and performance expectations in BPO contact centers today?
Looks like you kept the hard question for me. Good. And actually, before diving deep into the question, I get this feeling probably, why you're asking this question is because often the narrative with AI has been AI replacing job, AI replacing agents, and something that has been all over the news, media, and everywhere. All the time we are having this conversation. That's what the fear is. And that's when I think that we are kind of getting the question wrong. And, if that's how we keep thinking, that how AI is impacting, probably the failure is also become very predictable for organizations. Let me tell you what's happening on the ground, right? BPOs, they're kind of layering AI technologies onto workflows that were never actually designed for the way it is being looked at today, right? Copilots were sitting on top of a broken process. The sentiment dashboards, those are feeling managers. They are kind of often don't know what to do with it. The technology works, don't get me wrong, but the ROI doesn't appear because, again, we have not necessarily designed the work flow in that manner. This is a time when we should have taken to kind of redesign, reimagine the workflow. And BPOs who are actually getting that right response or right outcome out of their AI implementation have actually done exactly that. And they have probably gone through and looking into the whole process and then think, okay, what are the process I really need? Is this step really needed? Can I eliminate this particular step, or can I automate? That's the kind of question they're asking. And then they're also asking what genuinely requires human judgment. Where does the expertise irreplaceable, and then it creates that value. When you start there, the AI deployment then takes a very different and narrower scope, then fewer tools and much clearer outcome. And that redesign kind of changes the agent role significantly because now we are no longer having those repetitive high volume contacts. Those are gone because those are already fully automated. What then remains requires a judgment, empathy, and domain expertise. And that is really the harder job here. And here is what the most BPOs are missing. They're stripping out the routine work and leaving agents with all day full of the complex, emotionally charged cases, which is not a neutral change, right? The burnout becomes very much a compounding impact, and that is getting fast and faster then. Scheduling, supervisor coaching triggers, and recovery time between escalation shift from become then HR considerations to an operational necessities. People really need to think about those because these are the time when the agents will really need much more help. And often what we see is BPOs are caught up. They have not really caught up with that reality. The reality, they're still a little lagging behind. So in this context, the support infrastructure really also has to change. When automation hands off a difficult case, the agent walks in mid-conversation on the hardest problem in the queue. They need the full context instantly. The history, the prior attempts, what the bot already tried. We also need to understand the current sentiment. Without that, you have just moved the failure point from the machine to the person. And training also then needs to shift from a procedural scripts to judgment-based scenario work. And because the old learning and development model that was built for the old job, and that is no longer there. And in this context, we also need to offer all the help possible to the agents when they're they're doing the interactions. And that is, again, during the interactions, we can probably get all the necessary knowledge, the expertise, and even suggested responses and guide through the problem resolution. And when the call or the interactions get completed, then we can also help with the completion of the interaction. So these are, again, things which is likely to help deliver better employee experience. I think often we just get so much caught up about the CX part of it. We don't necessarily think enough about the EX, but I think this is a great opportunity. Now, what happens when all these easier tasks are moved out and it's been automated? And if we continue to still look at our agents the same way as what we have been doing over the years, we really need to change how we look at that because the performance expectations now are very different. And that's when it gets confused because we are kind of measuring machine and human, and we are still using the same yardstick for both. Does that really work? Should we be still considering about using those average handle time? or should I be measuring agent with the kind of resolution? And in that resolution, I think what really matters is the sentiment of those resolutions, the quality, right? And also the recovery, if it ever happens that is going on the other way, especially when it's a handoff from machine to human agent. And these are the things which we really need to start looking into, and we need to think that, look, the performance management framework of the earlier generation, when you had all human agent, is no longer is really applicable here, and we really need to start changing. So eventually the bottom line for me is AI is bifurcating the BPO market, not leveling it up uniformly. BPOs that redesign work and rebuild the agent support infrastructure will widen that particular gap. And those treating AI as a software purchase will spend more and still not get much value out of it.
Krishna, thanks so much for that. You're right. I did give you the hardest question. A couple of things there is clearly data is the fuel of AI, but you mentioned empathy and important things like domain expertise as we look at AI and automation. Well, let me also thank Sebastian and Sherrel for sharing your perspectives, our research findings and observations. To our online audience, thank you for attending. We know how busy you are, and we hope you enjoyed the content. Please stay tuned for our upcoming CX Unfiltered podcast in Q3. This is Michael DeSalles at Frost & Sullivan signing off.